My name is Sue Finn, and I'm a manager of a community interest company called Gamelan at Play.
When did you learn gamelan?
I first came across gamelan when I was working at the Sage Gateshead on Tyneside, and I was running the school visits programme at the music centre there. And we used to borrow a gamelan orchestra to bring it into the building for a couple of weeks in the summer and run workshops for school children, for local school children. So I first came across it probably about 5.5 years ago. And they didn't have sufficient people who were qualified to be able to deliver gamelan workshops. So because I was working with the school children coming into the building, I was given the opportunity to learn how to play, and in order to be able to deliver very basic gamelan workshops.
I see. So that's why you learned gamelan.
Well, that's initially why I learned it. But I loved it. I fell in love with it straight away. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I've been involved in all sorts of different types of music for forever, but this was the first time I'd come across gamelan, and it was really, really interesting. I loved it.
Who was your teacher there?
Sarah Kikas, who's the head of the schools programme at the Sage Gateshead, and she works with Chris Stones in Cumbria.
Okay. So how was the group there when you were learning gamelan? How many people were there?
Well, I think it was really a sort of like an inset teacher training day that I was doing. So there was maybe a group of about 20 of us, I think. So we did some fairly basic training for about, I think we did 2 days worth of training.
So from there, after that, you developed a community group?
No, at that point, what I was then doing was I was delivering workshops to the children that were coming into the building just for a very short period of time. And then I didn't play any more gamelan at all until I went back to university to do my masters. And when I finished doing my masters, I was looking for jobs, and this is about 2 years ago now. I was looking for jobs in the arts sector, didn't manage to find anything at all that I really wanted to do, but I had been self-employed previously, and thought, well, okay, I quite like being self-employed, so let's have a go at being self-employed. And I always liked the idea of using music as a training tool within the corporate sector. So I reviewed my CV and looked at what kind of musical skills I had that I could offer as training for the corporate sector, and gamelan was the obvious choice for me because it has such strength and capacity that it can use in that area, I think.
When did you bring the gamelan over? When did you buy the gamelan?
Well, I bought the gamelan in end of January 2009, so almost 2 years ago. When I made the decision to set up my business using gamelan, I was looking into the possibility of having a set of instruments commissioned for me and brought across from Indonesia. But then I heard through the Gamelan network that the instruments that had been owned by Norfolk Music Works were selling their instruments. So I put in a bid for their instruments, and I actually ended up with far more gamelan than I ever imagined I was going to have, because theirs was a double gamelan and I was only expecting to get a fairly small one, and instead I ended up with a massive one. So it's great. And where I have it is, I'm based in the northeast of England, but I'm based in a tiny little mining village in the middle of, on the edge of Tyne and Wear. And it's probably the last place that you would expect to find a gamelan orchestra. I live in a fairly large house that used to be 2 shops, and I've converted one room downstairs to be a little gamelan studio, and the rest of the instruments are kept in my garage, which is at the bottom of my house. So it's, as I say, when you walk into the front door of our house, you walk straight in, and then you're into my gamelan training room, and it's a very strange thing to find in the back end of Beyond, in a little mining village in Tyne and Wear.
So you have a community group. Could you tell us how did you develop the community group and how did you manage to recruit people?
Okay, the community group started up in February 2009, largely because I was interested in, the reason I used Gamelan, the reason I was very interested in using Gamelan was because I think it's just got such great capacity for creating community, and it's about community development. That's the bit about it that really excites me. For a lot of social cohesion work and community development work, Gamelan is an ideal tool. And the village that I live in is, as I say, an ex-mining community. There are lots of, there are very, very high unemployment, low aspirations and low educational achievement, and quite a lot of social problems. So it's an ideal vehicle for trying to develop social cohesion and community development in that area. So largely the recruitment was done through the local primary school. I ran an after-school club for the local primary school initially, and that involved the children, and then they spoke to their parents, and I said, well, I'm going to be starting one evening a week, I'm going to be running a community group. If anybody would like to come along, please do so. So it's happened by word of mouth, not really through advertising or anything at all like that. But we've had a really wide age range of people come to it. I think the youngest person that we've had come to the group was 4, and my oldest was 90 so far. So it's great fun.
Wow, that's great. And did you ask what really attracted them to join the group?
I think they were interested in it being just something very different to what they'd come across before. It's something that's very, very unusual. And also I think one of its beauties is the fact that because everybody is coming to it new, very few people have had experience of it previously, at least in the area that I'm working in. Everybody's starting from the same starting point. So there's no kind of hierarchy of, oh, well, I don't want to sit next to that person because I know they're really good and I don't feel very confident about it. Everybody's starting from the same starting point. And that gives a great, that's a really great leveler. So, and I think that just people were interested in it being something different. It was also, we were invited, the school group and the community group were invited to take part in a performance, to perform at our local council's major summer flower show as part of the entertainment as well in 2009. And that really helped to raise the awareness of the group in the area as well. So we got some publicity through that.
Wow, that sounds great.
So really, I'm just going to give you a little bit more of an idea. So I started out with the idea of this being a training tool that I could use within the corporate sector, but my timing wasn't brilliant because I set this up just about at the time that we hit the recession, and so no companies were really interested in taking it on board as it was something too different, something too new. But where the work was coming from it was coming from the community sector rather than the corporate sector. So the sole trader business that I'd started out with, which is Gamelan at Work, that really kind of changed direction a little bit, and in November 2009 we set up a community interest company called Gamelan at Play. That's the sister company to Gamelan at Work. And the purpose of Gamelan at Play is really focusing on the social cohesion side of it and working with community groups. So the Community Interest Company was formed in November 2009, and we've been applying for funding sources to be able to deliver social cohesion projects in the northeast. We got our first amount of money from Gateshead Council in April this year, and then that was match funded by the lottery fund, Awards for All. So we've been running a 9-month project around our locality, and then our latest major achievement, we feel, is, because we're a really very small organisation, is we've just been successful in an Arts Council bid to be able to run a community Gamelan festival on Tyneside next year, and that'll take place in July 2011.
Does it mean that you're inviting group
Absolutely.
from different
Absolutely.
places?
There's quite a, the gamelan scene in the northeast of England is actually very interesting because there's been quite an upsurge of interest. There's been a group, the Durham Gamelan group has been in existence for many, many years and has a very, very fine set of instruments as part of Durham University. Then I bought my instruments in February 2009. Then Northumberland Creative and Performing Arts, who are the school's music service in Northumberland, had commissioned a set of instruments, and they arrived in April 2010. And then the Sage Gateshead, and as part of a consortium called Gamelan North, they commissioned a set of instruments, and their instruments arrived in August 2010. So we now have 4 sets of instruments in the northeast, and a real upsurge of interest in the gamelan work. So the purpose of the Gamelan Festival that Gamelan at Play is hosting next year is in order to bring all of those groups together so that all of the communities that they're working with and the school groups and so on can have an opportunity to share the work that they're doing with each other. And our idea is to involve other Indonesian art forms as well. The festival will largely focus on gamelan, but it will also encompass wayang, the shadow puppetry, some dance work, and various other bits of work as well. So I think it's going to be very exciting.
Dance work, who will be teaching?
Oh, let me see. I think she's called Puja.
Sign up!
Absolutely, sign up now.
Wow, that sounds very interesting.